When a neighborhood thief steals my spicy gourmet chips, I unleash a swarm of crickets for revenge. But will my prank turn into a war I can't win? The moment I spotted Karen through the window, my mouth dropped open like a cartoon character, witnessing something utterly nonsensical. There she was, dressed in that garish pink robe, the same one she proudly wore while negotiating her latest spree of light-fingered mischief. My latest package, a much-anticipated delivery of spicy gourmet chips, had barely taken a moment's breath on my doorstep before it was snatched away, conjured into Karen's world of floral prints and snack heists. But I wasn't just another victim in her drama. I was the protagonist who had determined that enough was enough. As her silhouette receded from my doorstep, I delved deep into the depths of my crafty mind, brewing a plan that would be the envy of any sitcom star. I invited my neighbor Sam over for an early morning brainstorm session, the kind that would make the A-team proud. As he knocked on my door, I was practically bubbling with mischief. "Dude, you won't believe what just happened," I exclaimed, panting with energy. I quickly recounted the saga, the missing packages, the audacity of our neighbor, and my burning desire for revenge. Sam leaned against my kitchen counter, arms crossed, a mix of amusement and anticipation dancing in his eyes. "So, what's the plan?" he asked, scratching his stubble with an intrigued grin. That's when I unveiled my pièce de résistance, a box filled entirely with crickets, 4,000 of them, to be precise. We giggled uncontrollably at the sheer absurdity of it all. Who else could turn a petty neighborhood squabble into a cricket catastrophe? The logistics felt monumental, but I was ready to roll up my sleeves. Sam and I spent the better half of the morning scrolling through the internet and brainstorming the logistics of ordering crickets. Yes, the actual hopping, chirping kind. By the time we hit order, I was caught up in my own whirlwind of imagination. I envisioned Karen opening that box with glee, picturing a slapstick moment where 4,000 crickets burst forth like confetti at a parade. The thought alone made me chuckle. "It's like a cricket carnival, and she's the Grand Marshal," I exclaimed. Sam laughed for what felt like hours, the idea morphing into pure comedy gold. We couldn't wait for the delivery. A showdown of epic proportions was on the horizon. Days passed, and the anticipation leading up to the cricket delivery had my nerves tingling. The day finally arrived when the colossal box of crickets delivered, a sight to behold, I assure you. It was massive, cartoonishly oversized, and even the delivery guy did a double take before handing it over. "Are you sure you want to open this?" he asked, looking partly amused and partly concerned. "Oh, absolutely," I replied, suppressing a manic grin. I strategically placed the box right on my porch, sliding behind a nearby bush with Sam to play the patient observers. We were like wildlife photographers waiting for the perfect shot, but instead of observing nature, we were waiting for the chaos that would ensue. Time crawled as my heart raced. Suddenly, like clockwork, Karen emerged from her lair. With her trademark scowl plastered across her face, she ambled over to my porch. I held my breath, convinced I was witnessing the defining moment of our neighborhood saga. There she was, picking up the box of crickets, completely oblivious to the trap that was set. My eyes widened as she struggled to heft it onto her hip, the clinking of her jewelry intersecting with the soft chirps emitting from within the box. "This must be my lucky day," she exclaimed, thinking she had struck gold. Sam quietly muffled his laughter beside me while I nervously whispered, "Ready?" With a quick nod of affirmation between us, I unleashed my silent countdown. 3, 2, 1. Just as the last syllable left my mouth, Karen opened the box, and a wave of crickets exploded into the air, like a finely tuned orchestra gone rogue. The cacophony of chirping took over, filling the street with a sound no one would soon forget. Karen's eyes widened in a mixture of shock and horror. She screamed the kind of panic scream suited only for a horror movie. "What is happening?" she shrieked, flailing her arms, surrounded by a whirlpool of crickets scattering every which way, bouncing off the walls and scrambling over her floral blouse. In the midst of all this raucous drama, I leaned back against the bush and guffawed like a maniac. This was the sweetest revenge I could have concocted. Sam, laughing uncontrollably, couldn't contain his joy either as we watched our daring plan unfold. Karen was no longer the commanding neighborhood figure. She was now the hapless victim of her own thievery. The chorus of crickets echoed around us like a symphony of poetic justice. Karma truly is a cricket, isn't it? I mused, tears of laughter streaming down my cheeks. Would this be the end of Karen's notorious shenanigans, or merely an open invitation for a retaliatory mission? Well, that remained to be seen. As the last echoes of Karen's screeches faded into the chirping void, Sam and I erupted into a fit of laughter that could have rivaled a toddler's birthday party. I slapped my knee, trying to catch my breath. This was it, the crowning moment in our twisted neighborhood saga. Karen, the queen of entitlement, was now the headliner in what could only be described as a comedy of errors worthy of the silver screen. I can't believe we actually pulled that off, I wheezed, still high on adrenaline and amusement. Sam, still chuckling, pointed towards Karen, who was now flailing and swatting at the crickets, performing a dance that resembled more of a frantic chicken than a composed human being. "Look at her," Sam cackled with delight as we peeked out from behind our leafy cover. I could barely focus through my laughter, my cheeks hurting from the gusto of my amusement. The sight was a mix of surreal and hilarious, like an absurd art piece come to life. Karen's floral blouse was a veritable landscape of jumping crickets, each little creature bouncing around as if they were auditioning for a Broadway show. Is this what she wanted? A cricket circus? I gasped, feeling a warmth in my heart that only a well-executed prank could incite. Maybe I was a bit too invested in this game of neighborhood one-upmanship, but at that moment, it felt gloriously justified. After what felt like an eternity of revelry, the initial circus of chaos began to yield to something unexpected. The crickets started to settle. Karen, as defeated as a referee in a match long past its prime, began gathering her composure. The horror had morphed into an incredulous defeat. She became a sphere of frustration as both her dignity and her ability to safely navigate the cricket minefield were compromised. I could see her scanning the sky, processing her next move as if contemplating whether she could call in an airstrike to deal with the cricket invasion. "Do you think this will finally teach her a lesson?" I asked Sam, though I was half hoping for further delightful shenanigans. The sweet scent of victory wafted in the air, but it carried with it a hint of lingering uncertainty. Would she retaliate? Just as I was working myself into another round of giggles, Karen ripped a few of the crickets off her blouse, only to find herself even more aghast as they slipped right through her fingers, cartoonishly bouncing back into the chaos. "Hey, JJ, get off me!" she yelled, sending a few curious passers-by glancing our way as their brows furrowed in confusion. One brave neighbor, Mr. Thompson from 2 doors down, decided to spring into action. He dashed towards Karen, attempting in vain to assist her, brandishing a towel as if it were a cricket capturing lasso. Sam and I exchanged nervous glances, both awestruck at the ridiculous scene unfolding before us. Was it morally sound to have a laugh at her expense if someone was going to help? It felt like a full circus act, and now we were unwitting audience members. "The cricket rodeo, it's getting out of hand," I whispered to Sam, who shook his head as he struggled to contain his laughter. Not wanting to risk being caught by laughing too hard, we slipped back into the cover of our bush. It dawned on me that while we had instigated this chaotic cricket explosion, perhaps the time had come to reclaim our neighborhood peace. If Karen was truly on her way to a metamorphosis, realizing the karmic consequences of her entitled theft, then we could stand down from our malicious plot. But then again, I mused, why not consider the potential next-level chaos? Perhaps all I needed was one more clever idea up my sleeve to really drive my point home. Suddenly, Karen's phone rang, breaking the tension like a firecracker. The ringtone was loud, too loud. The cacophony of chirping overlapped with the music, and for a second, it sounded like a circus theme gone overboard. I snickered at the mischief we had inadvertently caused. As Karen fumbled with her phone, trying to bat away crickets and manage her obvious panic, I could see the gears turning in her mind. It was as if she was physically summoning some inner strength, preparing to unleash a fury against the household of crickets. What sort of revenge could she possibly come up with? Calling the exterminator, perhaps. Or worse, a cricket-themed hate letter. As if reading my thoughts, she finally turned on her heel, muttering to herself, ready to confront whatever was brewing in her mind. Sam and I could hear the low murmur of her rant filtering back to us. "This isn't over. Eddie's going to pay for this." My stomach tightened at the threat conveyed in her tone. There was a part of me that knew, in the end, I had unleashed a monster with this prank, inviting her wrath just when I thought I had brought about my sweet revenge. I glanced at Sam, our eyes wide in unison, caught between the thrill of the moment and the sweaty palms of impending doom. Would this spark a retaliatory firestorm of chaos? Or was my journey of cosmic balance simply starting? The only thing left was to wait and see. Before we could process what sense of havoc might rain down upon us next, the distant clamor of yet another neighbor's laughter echoed through the air. What if the shared amusement swayed Karen's perspective? After a moment of uncomfortably wondering if I'd finally crossed the line, I smiled nervously to Sam. Under the chaotic laughter of our cunning execution, and perhaps out of a little sympathy for an unfortunate neighbor learning her lesson, we could only anticipate what flip-flopping dynamic awaited us next. I felt exhilarated, but was I now charged with the responsibility of preparing for whatever tempest might come? What newly mischievous plans awaited as a clarion call in our fog of laughter? Could this only mean we were just getting started? As the laughter from our fellow neighbors faded into the chaotic cricket chorus that enveloped us, Sam gave me a sideways glance, a mischievous grin plastered on his face. "Dude, we didn't just light a fuse. We set off a fireworks show." His eyes sparkled with gleeful mischief. I couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of the situation. How had my ordinary life turned into a mutual playground of hilarity and flat-out chaos centered around our squabbling neighbor? It was as if the universe had decided my drab routine needed a ridiculous twist, and how ridiculous it had become. We were like two conspirators in a slapstick comedy, hiding behind our bush, our eyes wide with mirth and anxiety, unsure of what the next act would bring. "You think she's coming for revenge?" I asked with a twinge of excitement and dread, my mind racing with the possibilities of what Karen could come up with next. Even as I mused, something about Karen's demeanor struck me as oddly confident in its absurdity. She straightened her floral blouse, blustered her way through the sea of erratically bouncing crickets, and stormed toward her house with a purpose that felt like it belonged in a superhero movie. My heart raced. This wasn't just a battle of wits anymore. This was escalating. "We might have poked the bear here, Eddie," Sam warned, his laughter slowly fading into seriousness. I glanced at him, and for the first time I could see a flicker of worry in his usually laid-back expressions. "What happens if she gets her friends involved?" he continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. My brain went into overdrive as I started to imagine Karen assembling a team of chums, armed with baseball bats and bug spray, ready to hunt us down like a revenge-seeking posse. As if summoned by the tension in the air, Karen appeared back outside, clutching a large cardboard box wrapped in colorful, tropical-themed paper. I squinted at the sight, rubbing my eyes as if I'd imagined it. What fresh hell had she crafted? I gasped. Enthroned by her obstinate determination, she waved the enclosure with satisfaction like a prize trophy. Could it be that she was getting back at us with the ultimate sacrifice? Whatever it was certainly a spectacle. "Brace yourself," Sam chuckled nervously. "She's about to unleash something." My heart pounded in anticipation. This could either spiral the prank saga into a joyful crescendo or plunge us into the abyss of neighborhood disdain that even the breeziest of days could not conceal. The moment Karen began to slice through the paper, I could hardly contain myself. It wasn't just the comedic spectacle that enthralled me. It felt like leading roles had just swapped. Suddenly, she produced was that a water balloon? No, wait. It was more like a clearly labeled, complete cricket repellent system. A concoction of vague ingredients and enough warnings to terrify even the most fearless of gardeners. "Eddie, she's going chemical warfare on us," Sam gushed, barely able to keep a straight face. I couldn't decide whether to laugh or wonder if our neighborhood would soon be an apocalyptic war zone. If the karma gods were sending us cricket reinforcements, would our pranking come back to bite us? "We need a strategy, man. Team Raccoon needs to unite," I announced, eyes wide with adrenaline. It took only a heartbeat for him to nod in agreement. We whipped out our phones and quickly but quietly conjured a plan. Our goal: to intercept any attempted launch of Cricket Be Gone. The duo of pranking ninjas, while unorthodox, was determined to protect our turf. We strategically positioned ourselves behind the embrace of our bushy sentinel, ready to dodge, dive, and possibly unleash our own counter-prank. Could we refill Karen's cricket, be gone with marshmallows, or packing peanuts instead? The decadence of that immediate potential drove me wild with glee. Each time I imagined the look on her face when she unleashed a storm of fluff balls instead of the finest cricket aroma, I felt a rush of pure joy. But wait, another layer of the plot unfolded. As if sensing our plotting, Karen stomped around her yard filled with the cricket chaos, brandishing the spray bottle as if she were a wizard casting spells. And there was that commanding scowl, her eyes narrowing as she shot accusatory glares in our direction. I marveled at how one woman could embody the essence of entitling chaos. With this mix of confusion and delight, I snickered quietly, struggling to repress the urge to break cover. Sam nudged me back just in time as she turned and began dousing her yard with her concoction, creating a slick puddle that might rival a low-budget slip and slide. This was the most bizarre form of neighborhood warfare I had ever witnessed. The absurdity continued to blossom as Karen pranced around, oblivious to the pitter-patter of crickets still hopping around her. "You've got this all wrong," I thought, watching the scene unfold as if she existed in a reverie unperturbed by logic. Moments later, in a terrible twist of fate, she slipped on her own concoction just as she turned back to our bush, eyes locked onto us like a hawk spotting its prey. The ground looked like a watery grave for our nefarious plans. I felt a mix of triumph and absolute horror for her impending tumble, unsure whether to cheer or cry. Would this turn into humiliation for her, or a humorous turn of events for us? Would Karen find herself crashing to the ground, joining us in a chaotic parody of what had been the greatest prank war of the year? "Run!" I shouted, punctuating the unease of the moment, adrenaline racing through me. And before I knew it, we were sprinting like Olympic contenders, racing for the safety of my front porch. All of a sudden, echoes of laughter mixed with the cacophony around us. A pure symphony of laughter, pranks, and what could only be labeled as ridiculous neighborhood disruption. Is she really going to take us on? I wondered aloud, glancing back as Karen steadied herself, her face a portrait of pure fury, doused in a tinge of slapstick humor. I could only hope she didn't have any more tricks up her sleeve, although I have to admit, that thought had me teetering between believing in our little game to wondering if we were creating a monster of our own. As we caught our breath at the porch, I mulled over our current situation. "Nobody said fun should come without a catch, huh?" I chuckled, still almost in disbelief over the heights we had reached. Although the stakes may have risen, the fun lay in the unpredictability of it all. "So, what now?" Sam asked, panting and mind-racing as rapidly as mine, both of us aware that this was quite extraordinary indeed. Should we hide and let her fancy palates run dry? Or would Karen escalate this prank war to absurd proportions? My heart thudded, both from the thrill of our mischief and anticipation of the ultimate showdown. Would the cricket saga plunge deeper into delightful madness? Or had we finally exhausted this wild chapter of our rivalry? I could hardly wait to find out. As I peered over my porch railing, still marveling at Karen's fiasco, an overwhelming sense of comedic glee washed over me. I couldn't help but wonder if the universe had an elaborate sense of humor, transforming a simple neighborhood into an impromptu stage filled with absurdity. "You think she's going to start an HOA for cricket-related disturbances?" I quipped, elbowing Sam, who was still trying to control his laughter. The idea of Karen spearheading a neighborhood initiative against prankish disturbances was startlingly vivid, and the mental image of her angrily handing out flyers scattered in her floral blouses was too rich to resist. The thought of her future community meetings being all about organized cricket removal made me snicker. It was as if she was a character in an outrageous sitcom, where every episode sparked more ludicrous events than the last. My inner prankster king was reveling in the lurking potential of our antics. Sam's laughter echoed in the cool evening air, causing me to feel a sense of camaraderie. We were laughing over the mischief we created instead of hiding from it. But deep down, an uneasy feeling began to seep in. It was one thing to prank our neighbor. It's another, if she summoned the wrath of all her disgruntled friends, ready to join forces in an uprising against mischievous antics like ours. The prospect of a neighborhood showdown filled with floral blouses and clanking jewelry had the potential to rival blockbusters on Netflix. All this for some stolen packages? How much time does he really need to dedicate to our infamous crusade? I pondered aloud, scratching my scruffy beard in contemplation. Was I delving into a rivalry that was going to spiral into multi-level epic chaos? Just then, Karen's figure reappeared in the flickering porch light, silhouetted against the chaotic aftermath of her cricket-imbued yard. I felt a rush of adrenaline as her warrior spirit seemed ignited with new resolve. She clutched what appeared to be an indeterminate amount of household items, all arranged in a sort of battle formation against her closest enemy, which was, of course, us. "What now?" I whispered to Sam, squinting to get a better look at Karen's latest arsenal. "Was that a bottle of bug spray and a fly swatter? I bet those are her secret weapons, ready to obliterate any cricket that dares approach." The foolish bravado of her prepped retaliation had me almost cheering her on. "Let the tomfoolery commence," I added, mimicking a commentator announcing a boxing match. "Let's hope she's just overly prepared and not truly out for blood," Sam suggested. Another round of laughter escaping him as we slid further behind the bushes, which were now turning into our very own fort. If she's resorted to Plan B, which is apparently filled with household items, we might be okay. The absurdity of hiding like kids plotting world domination was not lost on me. The more I thought about it, the more I realized we were trapped in a relentless prank war cycle that could escalate much faster than the speed of neighborhood gossip. What's next? Is Karen going to lead a battalion of her friends with nets? I wondered, picturing a troop of flamingo shirts marching toward our lawn in militaristic formation. The tension climbed to an unbearable height as she started roaming closer to our bushy barricade, her eyes narrowing into squints. Then it happened. She caught sight of us. Karen raised the fly swatter triumphantly like it was the holy grail of cricket defense. "Get ready, boys. Operation Cricket Dorito is a go," I said, suppressing a smirk as I nudged Sam. Desperation strikes. Our giggles blended with the late summer breeze, making me feel rather ridiculous but entirely encouraged. This was turning into the kind of ridiculousness that my childhood backyard games could only imagine. Who knew that prank wars could evoke a sense of camaraderie, adventure, and downright absurd hilarity? Before we knew it, she charged toward us, flailing her unlikely weapons and issuing a shriek that echoed down the street. "Get off my lawn, you juvenile delinquents," she proclaimed. I couldn't hold back my laughter. It was pure, spontaneous hilarity, amplified by the bizarre nature of the experience we had unintentionally woven. "Oh no, the Karen tornado is coming," I hollered in mock terror, causing Sam to double over with laughter. The very notion that our little acts of mischief had drawn such theatrical retaliation from Karen was both ludicrous and captivating. What were we in for next? A neighborhood siege filled with dramatic flair and ridiculous acrimony. With my heart racing and cheeks flushed from laughter, I turned to Sam, who seemed ready to burst aside. "What's the worst that could happen? I mean, how much more ridiculous can this get?" My mind was ablaze with ideas, the spirit of playful mischief urging me on. Should we challenge her to a flinging contest? Let's trade household items and see who can throw them in her yard without getting caught. The very thoughts were outrageous. Was I really willing to turn this childish tomfoolery into larger mayhem? But honestly, how much more could she retaliate? The anticipation of Karen's next move was thrilling, a combination of theatrical flair and an invitation to keep the prank war alive. Would this all protest lead to ultimate domination, or were we about to witness our collective downfall? In light of our epic standoff, one thing was certain. I was completely hooked on this vibrant absurdity. As Karen gallivanted across her lawn, armed with a fly swatter and what I was convinced was a bottle of off-brand bug spray, my mind raced through a kaleidoscope of comedic possibilities. Is this what she's been waiting for? To unleash her inner cricket-hunting beast? I whispered to Sam, gripping the side of our bush fort as stifled giggles threatened to escape. The way she danced, swinging her so-called weapons with all the grace of a deflating balloon, made me feel an odd kinship with the critters that had become my unlikely allies. What if she swings that fly swatter with such force it sets off a chain reaction of chaos? The neighborhood cat might come to their rescue, I proclaimed, dodging out from our shrubbery just enough to witness the full extent of her over-the-top theatrics. Just then, Sam burst into laughter so loud it transformed into a snort that echoed down the street, clearly not helping our covert mission. "You might just ruin our cover, oh master of stealth," I quipped, making a grand motion with my arms like a ninja in training. But my absurd mocking was quickly halted as Karen whipped around, eyes squinting as if she could smell our pranking presence from yards away. "I know you're out there, Eddie. This isn't over," she bellowed, sturdy and resolute, as if challenging me to a duel of wits. Adrenaline pumped through me like I'd just downed 6 cups of coffee. Who would win, this quirky prankster or the ever-feisty Karen? Battle of the Titans, eh? She's ready for war. Sam laughed, but then his face turned serious as he leaned in closer. "Eddie, what if she's rallying her pals to join forces? You're not just out playing Karen, you might be igniting a full-on uprising. Have you considered the implications?" A chill ran down my spines. We were now trapped in a whirlwind of neighborhood drama that could either skyrocket us into local folklore or land us in the kind of mischief that could see me sporting a fireman's hat, courtesy of her friends. "A coalition of Karens. I can see it now," I replied, chuckling until I imagined her flanked by a gaggle of disgruntled floral blouses and clinking jewelry on a mission to retrieve the stolen crickets. What a petulant movement they'd start, a pack of sassy women on the hunt for justice. Before I could spiral into yet another scheme, a piercing shriek from Karen snapped me back to reality. "You two, I'll have you know that I've already warned the neighborhood." With that, she waggled her fly swatter ominously, as if it were a wand charged with the power to conjure immediate deliverance. In a bizarre twist, the comedic tension morphed into a delightfully splendid absurdity. "She's gone full-on Hogwarts on us," I exclaimed to Sam, who could barely keep from rolling on the ground, gasping for air. Each exaggerated gesture from Karen seemed to fuel our hilarity even more. "Why doesn't she just start casting spells?" I suggested, eyes sparkling with mischief. In what felt like a dance-off between her futile attempt at intimidation and our explosive laughter, a plan took root in my mind, a masterful stroke of ridiculous brilliance. "We need to turn this into a grand spectacle, Sam. A staged showdown, something worthy of an audience." My energy skyrocketed, and with every word, I became more invigorated. We could set up theatrical props, something unexpected that would best her fly-swatting antics. A foray of creative pranks blossomed between us. We envisioned a giant cardboard cricket throne festooned with ribbons, declaring me as the true cricket king. "That'll show her that I'm not just the minor villain. I'm the proud champion of this arena," I roared, as the words spilled from my mouth like a comedic monologue. Eagerly fueled by my outline of the grand event, Sam began sketching plans furiously on a crumpled napkin. He was fully on board with the allure of making the absurd a reality. Our neighbor showdown could really cement our legend status, Eddie. What prop should we use first? Cardboard, dampened with crickets, or perhaps a water balloon-filled cricket kingdom? The vividness of our prank battlefield painted visions of a rubber chicken catapult and even a bouncy castle, each an over-the-top addition to our unfolding saga. The idea that Karen would be transformed from a precious neighbor into the ultimate comic foil only amplified our excitement. "If this doesn't go viral on the neighborhood chat, I'll eat one of those 4-0 crickets," I promised, punctuating the absurdity with laughter that echoed through the illuminated dusk. Little did I know that as we plotted in our bushy hideout, Karen had been devising her own plot to reclaim her domain. As we formulated our back-and-forth antics, the thought that she might recruit a battalion of equally rambunctious pals loomed larger than ever. I couldn't shake the exhilarating thrill that coursed through me, or the sheer ridiculousness of our nascent rivalry. "Can you imagine?" I chuckled. "A parade of floral blouses and angry hands wielding fly swatters marching right here? We'd become local legends, Sam." As our laughter filled the cooling night air, I realized the unforeseen blessing of having Karen around. She brought wild enjoyment and a steady pulse of mischief to our otherwise mundane lives. How could we ever top this? I pondered, utterly enraptured by my fervor for life's playful absurdity, wondering just how far our neighborly theatrics could stretch.